Why is the world standing by when Mr Netanyahu, who took 5 elections to be allowed to form the current Israeli government, making inhumane decisions in mass slaughter of innocent people, his people?
Well, I'm going to pick up with you, Malcolm Turnbull. That question was
I didn't hear the first part of it.
He asked about Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yeah, sure. That's another one of my...
well, what is your assessment of the way he's
political colleagues, I suppose, in the sense of being a leader of a country at the time I was
What do you make of the
PM?
way he's running the war?
Well, look, the October 7 attack by Hamas, that brutal, violent, criminal, obscene assault on Israel that took over 1,200 lives, that changed Israel. It shocked the whole world. But it was designed as a provocation. It was designed. I said this in the statement that we drafted for a number of former PMs. Hamas wanted the Israeli Defence Force to invade Gaza and to kill Gazan civilians. They wanted that. It was a provocation. And so the problem that Israel has is the country has been shattered, not just by the deaths, I mean, that they are bad enough, but by the fact that all the things they believed in, the strength of their defence force, missing in action, the far-sightedness of their intelligence services, didn't see it coming, the superiority of their technology. Hey, 3,000 terrorists armed with Kalashnikovs and a D9 bulldozer got through the fence and invaded their country. I mean, this is mind-blowing. And so the reaction, the violent, the invasion of Gaza, all of that was what Hamas sought to provoke Israel into doing.
And so should Israel not have taken the provocation?
Well, I mean, Tom Friedman in the New York Times has, pointed to the way India was very restrained under Manmohan Singh after the terrorist attacks by Lashkar-e-Toiba in 2008. I don't think Netanyahu could... I don't think any Israeli government could have not responded in the kinetic way they did, but...
But has it been overreach?
Well, the question you have to ask yourself is firstly, is the price in Palestinian civilian lives now so high that the claim that the Israeli Defence Forces make that they're doing everything they can to protect human life is no longer credible? And what is it doing? And this is from an Israeli point of view. Their question has to be, are they losing so much public support in the world today that they are, in effect, achieving what Hamas wanted to achieve, which is Israel being...
Is it your view that that's what's happening?
I fear that the Hamas would see what has happened as being entirely in accordance with their provocation. It is, the truest thing you can say about the Middle East is the only thing in abundant supply is bad options. And it's very tough. I don't see any good options there.
No.
And I think the question for Israel and for its friends and and supporters, as Australians are friends of Israel, and certainly I count myself as a friend of Israel. The question is not whether we can see a solution, but whether we are at risk of making a bad problem worse.
Rebecca, this has played out spectacularly, of course, in Australia, in the arts community. More stories today about really a breaking point inside institutions and communities. This question essentially asks the question about Benjamin Netanyahu and the support some countries, including Australia, have provided. Is something shifting? Is there a turning point in terms of the support countries like ours are willing to provide?
What I can observe and what was kind of interesting to me looking at when we first started to hear about what was happening in Israel and Gaza is it came very hard on the heels of the referendum on the voice, which was, I know it sounds like it's a tangent, but what was really clear doing a lot of work on that was how polarisation in the Australian community, which we're seeing in all advanced democracies, is in so many ways the enemy of good sense, of reform and progress. So what is happening in the Australian community, which if you look at polling about what should happen, it's almost like immediately split down the line. Half of the community think one thing and half the community think the other. But the reality is that you've got very, very highly engaged minorities, people who absolutely think that everything Israel is doing is unjustified and unashamedly out there with the Palestinian cause. And you have people who think that the Palestinians brought it entirely upon themselves, egged on, I've got to say, by certain parts of the media. It's become a partisan issue rather than an issue of sense and understanding history. And the vast majority of Australians turning away. Right. And not knowing what to think. And that doesn't get reflected in surveys that say 50% think one, 50% think the other. And it's that polarisation, it's that kind of, you know, the kind of extremes on either side that see it with a complete lens of ideology and everybody else thinking, I need to walk away from this because it's too overwhelming.
Jioji, you work at a university where, of course, this is one of the biggest issues among students who have become very active on it. Are you seeing a real split in your own classrooms on campus?
Yeah, there's been statements that have been put out by the university around making sure that we're creating safe learning environments for everybody. The university has made a clear statement that they're not making a specific statement about this particular matter. And it's in alignment with the ability to have robust, critical conversations. And I think that's what's important. I think we do need to have critical conversations that are nuanced, that allow people to express their opinions in a safe way, whilst also ensuring that we're listening, that we're not just sort of virtue signalling, we're actually listening to the realities associated with what's happening in these particular places. And so I think it's really, really important that we do continue to encourage those particular conversations, those critical and nuanced conversations, as opposed to just simple, I'll take this side, I'll take that side, because those binary conversations do not work.
Peter Frankopan, that question from our questioner was essentially about Benjamin Netanyahu and support for him and the way that he's running this war. What do you make of what Malcolm Turnbull's really shared with us, the view that the way that Israel has responded to this provocation is becoming now the issue because of the incredible loss of life?
Well, I'd probably take a slightly different view, which is that what this shows is that no one is able to put a brake on Netanyahu. The only influence, we can all have our opinions and we can set fire to our campuses and try and listen. I absolutely think that's right about how important it is to respect other people's opinions, but it doesn't move the needle in terms of changing policy at Netanyahu and his cabinet. And I think that has come as a shock to all of us who thought that we lived in a global commons where the Security Council at the UN, where the ability to have conversations that would restrain, and it's clear that the only power that is potentially able to bring Netanyahu back in is the US, and Netanyahu's not even listening to Biden. So the only options left to Biden are pretty cataclysmic in terms of what he can do. And the question, I guess, now is whether the US will play some of those cards in terms of restricting aid completely, potentially. And we saw the drafting of a ceasefire at the UN, but there are limited abilities to try to influence what it is that Netanyahu and his government are doing. And that, I think, poses all sorts of problems for conflicts in other parts of the world too. But the powerlessness of us to be able to actually make our voices heard in a meaningful way is pretty surprising and shocking.